Hello, and welcome back to Second Operator, the live stream podcast dedicated to portable synthesizers and DAWless music. I am your host, Shines. It is super nice to be back here for episode 3. I feel like I'm finally getting into the swing of things here, for real. A huge thank you to the community that is steadily growing here on YouTube as well as on Instagram. And we're on Apple Podcasts now. That's right, the full, nicely edited audio version of this live stream can be enjoyed offline on the Apple Podcast app. Currently working on getting onto Spotify next, so stay tuned for more information on that. Speaking of the community, it's been really awesome seeing new people pop up that I've never actually met before, even in my 3 years on Instagram. I'm really looking forward to meeting many, many more people in the DAWless Instagram community, as well as in person eventually. Speaking of which, if you are in the Raleigh area of North Carolina, I will be attending the Meet and Bleep synthesizer event on Friday, May 5th at the Mecca restaurant, starting around 6 p.m. I'll actually be playing a short set on OP1 along with a small vocal effects box, which I'll be using as a vocoder. The event itself is geared towards anyone who is interested in standalone and modular synthesizers and wants to come out and meet folks in the synth-head community here in North Carolina. There's going to be food, drinks, synthesizers. I mean, it's going to be a great time. So anyway, May 5th in Raleigh. You can find out more information at Meet and Bleep on Instagram. We have a great episode for you today. We're going to be talking to Josh at North Game Studio, someone who I've been following for quite a while now, but have finally got the chance of speaking with. We're going to get into the interview in just a minute after today's news. The NAMM Show 2023 has now officially ended and has presented us with some pretty amazing new synthesizer gear. We talked a little bit about the Polyend Tracker Mini last week, but the Cascadia, a brand new semi-modular synthesizer from Intelligel, has been making some incredible waves this week. It's a larger sized, relatively thin, gray rectangular box that has a ton of small faders and knobs on it that, beginning with the oscillators, give it a very fluid, very flexible looking interface. According to musicradar.com, it's got over 100 patch points and can produce sounds reminiscent of both East and West Coast synths. It's a hard word to say. The Cascadia comes in at $21.49 USD and is now available to order. And I gotta say, this thing looks like an absolute juggernaut. I mean, judging by its rounded, encapsulated edges, it doesn't seem to be Eurorack mountable, but honestly, with over 100 patch points and a whole bunch of wave options, this is looking like the only synthesizer you will ever need. Of course, we all tell ourselves that, don't we? Really looking forward to seeing what everyone creates on the Cascadia. Moving on. Eventide, company that creates the very popular reverb pedal, the Blue Sky, and the other pedal, the Big Sky, have released their next generation H90 harmonizer pedal. This pedal might be intended for guitar players. I know Eventide products are seen in a lot of guitar stuff out there, but I've also seen them used a lot with synthesizers. They do pair up quite nicely with synthesizers like the Subharmonicon from Moog to create these vast ambient pieces. I'm really interested to see what someone could do with a harmonizer attached to their single-voiced synthesizer. So if you are interested in getting into some crazy harmonic stuff, this might be a pedal to look into. And lastly, Artiphone has released their latest small synthesizer instrument, the Orba 2. You might have actually seen the original Orba on several folks' Instagram accounts. It looks like a very small round drum if you haven't seen one before. It's got a circle of 8 sort of almost like pizza slices, pads at the top to play various loops, melodies, synthesized drums. It seems this new version is adding a sampling engine. So combined with the phone app, you'll be able to take this thing everywhere, record sounds with your phone, load them into the Orba 2, and then create amazing sampled loops right there on the device. Apparently, you can also use this as a MIDI controller, which is pretty nice, and it comes in at $149 USD. So that's all the news we have for today. And next, we're going to move into our interview. I would like to give a very warm welcome to Josh from North Game Studio. Solo game developer, absolutely incredible pixel artist, and OP1 musician.
Hey friends, North here. I'm doing all right. How's everything on your end?
Oh, it's going great. So you go by North for your game studio?
Yeah, typically I go by North. A lot of people call me North online. Josh is fine. It's fine with me.
I think North is cool. I mean, my name is actually Stefan, but I go by Shines with my music stuff. But North is that's a pretty cool name. Love it. I actually forgot to ask you in the in our stream test the other day. Where are you actually based out of?
I'm in Miami, Florida. I'm originally from Rochester, New York, which is the exact opposite environment. I'm now in Miami, so sunny Miami from cloudy, gray, and cold Rochester.
From one extreme to another, I take it.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
How are things down there right now?
They're great down here. Can't complain. I mean, we had a bit of rain for the past couple of days, but that's how it goes down here. But now we're doing awesome.
Oh, that's so good to hear. So let's actually just let you introduce yourself here. Do you mind just giving us a little bit about your background in just as it pertains to music? Maybe how it pertains to you moving around and getting into some of the things that you're into.
Yeah, sure. So, I grew up a teen in the 90s, so I'm an 80s child. And in the 90s, I grew up listening to grunge. Um, so my musical influence really stems from somewhere very different from what you probably hear if you listen to my music, but it came from listening to Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains, Radiohead, Rage Against the Machine, that kind of music. Eventually, that led me to pick up my first instrument, which was the guitar. And once I discovered the power chord and a distortion pedal, that was it.
Oh, that's super cool. So that was your first instrument, you would say, was the guitar?
That was my first instrument. Yeah.
Were you ever like take lessons, classically trained, any of that kind of stuff?
No, no, never classically trained. Um, just everything I learned was by ear. In the 90s, we didn't have the resources that we have today. We didn't have
Right.
YouTube, we didn't have the internet. You just learn by ear. You learn by playing with other people, going to shows. So I was in a bunch of punk bands, and that's kind of how I learned. And from there, the idea of learning by exploration has always been the best way for me to learn. That's really how I like to learn things.
Cool. So you're still kind of making things by ear, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Everything I do is, yeah. So sometimes it's definitely not right, for sure. But that's part of music. For me, it's about emotion and going through, the feelings of making music more so than it being right or wrong.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, music is, a lot of people do say that music is just emotion set to sound, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would agree.
Do you remember when it first kind of clicked to you that you could write stuff that would, carry emotion to it?
No, I think I still it hasn't clicked for me yet. I,
I
I'm
think it
I'm still
has.
trying to get there.
Oh, that's. I do think it has. I mean, you do have an ear for melody. You have an ear for chord progressions and how they move things forward. And I definitely want to get sort of into sort of that part of the conversation as well. Are you part of any bands or any kind of music projects now?
No, not really. No, I mean, I did that for a while. For
Mm,
many years, I grinded through the music scene, and I played in various bands
mhm.
and worked my way up to even working, under the Sony music label, and worked in
Whoa.
studios and recorded. And after really exploring that part of my life,
Mhm.
it's still fun. I would love to still do it, but I prefer to just kind of do it on my own now.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, music can be, it is a very personal thing, isn't it?
It is for me, yeah.
Wow. So you actually worked for Sony for a little while, or you worked as like a
I didn't
music?
work.
Mhm.
Yeah, I didn't work for them. But after playing with so many different bands, eventually you kind of work your way through. Your skill set changes, and you end up getting into bigger bands, more recognizable bands. And eventually, I worked with several bands. I worked with Sony, so I was part of I guess their rotation of musicians. So I would have
Interesting.
access to like their rehearsal space, which is crazy. Their rehearsal space is nuts. And I would just be able to go in there and just play music. And eventually
Wow.
they'll pull you out of it and put you in the sound room, and you just record. And and they just keep whatever it is that you record that day, and they slice it and use it in whatever music they want. It's weird. The music industry was weird in the 90s.
That is was this up in Rochester or was this in Miami?
I was in Miami.
Wow, that's weird. It's like almost like a musical factory where they're just kind of like
Oh
siphoning
yeah.
ideas out
Yeah.
of people. That sounds really actually sounds kind of nefarious the way you've described it.
It's 100%. It's
Wow.
like Sony has their ability to have their own sample library, basically.
Wow. But I guess they gave you the opportunity to, I guess, use some higher end equipment. Was that kind of the trade off there?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you get to meet other
Hmm.
musicians, you get
Hmm.
to play in other bands, and if something clicks for you, it's an opportunity for you to go on tour. It's being a touring member, so it has its perks for sure.
Damn, you are way more of a legitimized musician than I have ever dreamed of being.
No,
That's incredible.
not at all.
Really? Wow. I mean, that's still pretty incredible, though. I mean, you got to go and I mean, if Sony is sending you on tour, man, that's pretty
No, I
cool.
never went on the tour. No, not for me. It's too much.
That makes sense. I mean, it is tour life. I think could be really tiring and everything. Um, do you do much traveling these days?
No, man, I'm a dad. So the only
Nice.
travel I do is whatever it is that, whatever birthday party they have next. That's as far as I go.
That's- oh man, that's awesome. Because I was gonna say, I mean, if that's cool. That's cool that that you have that going on in your life. Um, and we'll get to some of the family stuff too. But I'm kind of curious as to how you came to own and make music on your OP1.
Wow, that's an interesting story. So after
Hmm.
after working as a musician for a bit, and spending a lot of my time trying to make that work, eventually, um, it wasn't for me, and I sold everything that I had except for my guitars. That's the one thing
Wow.
that was the most personal for me. So I kept those. I still have those around. I still play them, and but it became something that I didn't want to pursue professionally anymore. I wanted to
Yeah.
make music for myself and something that made me happy. So I moved on to a different career path. And it wasn't until, 20 years later, um, that I jumped into this weird game development hobby of mine, that I really was inspired to make music for these pixel art scenes that I was creating, and make sounds for these scenes to really bring them to life.
Hmm.
And I hadn't thought about ways to do that. So I tried different software synthesizers like Minibit and BX or BFXR is I think is a free one. It's like a randomized chiptune sound creator,
Ooh, I need to
but
write these
nothing
down.
really. Yeah, BFX or BFXR. That's free,
Cool.
really good. Minibit is like $20. It's an Ableton plugin you can get. It's a software VST, but it's really
Nice.
great. Um, Nothing really was as fun for me to use until I started going on YouTube and just looking for ways to make music or make sounds that were representative of what I was making, which is very 80s inspired retro games. And um, OP1 videos came out because you can't go on YouTube and search for synths and not see an OP1 video pop
Yep.
up. And at
Yep.
the time, this was when Red Means Recordings, Jeremy, his videos on OP1 were at its peak. So of course I saw them, and when I saw the OP1, I just knew like this is it, like this is everything that I've been looking for.
Nice.
But Jeremy's a musical genius, so yeah, of course it works for him. There's no way if I ever bought this thing that I could make it work for me. It works for him because of his musical genius, not for me. So and that also it was discontinued at that
Right.
time. It
Right.
it was discontinued. I looked for one online and they were like $3,000. It was insane.
Wow.
So I remember I had a night where I jumped on Instagram and was just looking for other OP1 videos, and I came across Johnny B. Good's account.
Yep. Yep.
Johnny
Yep.
B. Good is a great, he has a great account, and he's a good buddy of mine. And I saw that he had just gotten one, I think he had his first post. I was there and he posted, my wife just got me this. I was like, oh my God, he found one used.
So cool.
And I became friends with him online.
Cool.
And it was Johnny who really spent a lot of time talking to me online and really made me feel like I could pick one up. So as soon as they came out on sale again, they were being remanufactured.
Right.
Yeah, I immediately jumped on it.
Oh, that's super cool. Did you order one online or did you go to some store to buy it?
We don't have any stores in Miami about that. So I ended up, we don't have a perfect circuit. We don't have any of that here. So
Right.
I bought one online, brand new, directly from TE, right
Nice.
when they got back into manufacturing. And yeah, and I love it. I
Oh
love it.
man. Do you remember the first thing you did with it as soon as you turned it on?
Um, I was completely overwhelmed, but but it was yeah. As soon as I found Dr. Wave, that was it. That was my synth right there. Dr. Wave is always on every track I make, and the majority of all my tracks are using just the built-in presets. I really don't have a large sample library at all.
That's incredible. And
It mostly all comes from OP1.
wow. And for those out there that don't know, Dr. Wave, I believe, is the 8-bit or 16-bit sound engine on OP1. Is that
8-bit
correct?
sound engine.
8-bit sound
Yep,
engine.
it's an
Yeah.
8-bit sound engine. It's very lush. It's very bright. That's my favorite go-to engine on the OP1. I try to make other stuff, but I always come back to having some level of Dr. Wave in there.
That's super, super duper cool. I always imagine you were using the digital engine because sometimes I hear there's like some weird overtones and stuff to it. But I think Dr. Wave is one of the least used engines on my OP1, and you're really inspiring me to go in and explore it a little bit, deeper and further because I see the interface and it's a bunch of like purple X's or something on your screen, right? And it's
Yeah.
really
It's
interesting.
not a great engine to understand.
Mhm.
It's very randomized. The
Yeah,
algorithm behind it is very challenging. But that's okay for me because since I'm an ear player and everything I play comes from feeling and exploring, it kind of lends itself really well to that. So for me, I just really enjoy just seeing what Dr. Wave is going to present me with, and if it's a sound that I love, I'll typically save it as one of my presets so that I have some consistency in my
mhm.
musicality. But for the most part, it's all Dr. Wave. It's all randomized, and who knows what's going to happen.
That is super duper cool. Wow. So I noticed that you have an Instagram account where you post things about your video game as well as some of your Instagram jams. And you also have a Bandcamp that, when upon exploration of it, has just a ton of stuff up there. I mean, you have different genres, you have different albums up there. I believe you go by Transit FM. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I started making music like that sort of around the same time I started my game development journey. And Bandcamp I use more as like an online journal for music. Transit FM is kind of the name I had given myself as an artist when I was promoting some of my music. North Game Studio is definitely a bit more recognizable for the game development stuff that I do.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like two different personas.
Interesting. And I didn't really get a chance to go through every single track that's up there, but I'm assuming there's different genres of music, like ambient and more chiptune stuff. Do you have maybe a favorite type of music that you make?
Oh man, I mean, I love making chip tune stuff with like real punchy drums, like a
Nice,
real
nice.
bright drum. I love putting in drones and arps and all these different, sounds that kind of ride a similar wave. Um, those are definitely not the most popular songs that I've released. I think people tend to favor more my calmer things,
Hmm.
but that's just
Interesting.
the kind of music I love to make.
Oh, that's super cool. And I see you're also using pocket operators. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. So I have the POKO, right? That's
The
the
sampler.
sampler, which
Yeah.
is yeah, it's fantastic. I don't really use it for my music making as much. It's just a fun thing to have around to quickly
Nice.
make music. Um, I have the arcade, which I've sampled some of the sounds off the arcade into the OP1,
Cool.
and then I have the robot, which is it has a really good lead synth sound. And I think I've posted a couple videos with the robot in it.
I need to go check those out because that sounds amazing. I've on your Instagram, I mostly see your video game updates, but I also see your OP1 videos. But I really want to check out some of your Pocket Operator stuff. That's super duper cool. So you got
Yeah,
your
you gotta
OP1,
go back. You gotta go
yeah,
back into
yeah.
that library.
Nice. Wow. Do you have like a shout out album on Transit FM on your Bandcamp that you'd really recommend for people to get into?
Not really, man. I mean, there is no target audience. There is no preparation for this. Something that I had to deal with when I was playing music is
Mhm.
back in the day, when I first started, there was a lot of polishing and production and, playing the same progression over and over. And
Mhm.
nowadays it's I just put out whatever I come up with. I don't polish it too much. Some of it isn't great, some of it's better than others. I think the Boomer album is probably my most favorite work right now, just because that's the one that I am creating with more intention. Like there's more thought behind that soundtrack because it goes along with a narrative. But everything else is very much just an experience and a journey of what I created at that moment.
Oh, that's so cool. Is the Boomer album going to be up somewhere for people to listen to?
It's on my Bandcamp page now. There's about 4 tracks. It's still an ongoing project, so I'm not sure how many tracks will come out of it. I think it depends on how long that game's going to be.
Oh, that's super cool. And I'm actually going to play the trailer in just a moment here. For those listeners out there that don't know, Boomer is a brand new video game created by North here that is yet to be released. I believe it's on pre-order right now.
Yeah, you could wish list it on Steam, but
Very cool.
it's still very much very pre-release right now.
Very cool. And the entire soundtrack, from what you were telling me, has been made on OP1. Is that correct?
Oh, I did everything on OP1. The music is from the OP1. All of the sound effects you hear, the coin pickups, the way that you collect power-ups, the jumping sounds, it all comes from the OP1. In fact, if you go on my YouTube page, there is a video, a very boring video about how I made one of the sounds in Boomer, because someone had asked me, like, my
Oh,
YouTube page
cool.
is mostly to share my process with people who ask me.
Nice.
So somebody had asked me, hey, how do you make the music for Boomer? So I shared the sound production process, and I illustrate how I use the OP1, how I layer different sounds
Hmm.
together to come up with a cohesive sound that I use for a particular part of the game. Now there is maybe 1 or 2 tracks that were not done on the OP1
Hmm.
because they were donated by some fans of the
Oh,
game.
cool.
Um,
Nice.
I have this guy named Enzaya. Sorry, I'm still a little sick. This
Yeah.
guy named Enzaya, ENZALLA, is his Instagram handle, and he was one of the first ones to reach out and say, "Hey, I love Boomer. Can I make a song for it?"
Wow.
And I thought, you could do whatever you want with it, man. I mean, Boomer's meant to inspire people to step outside of their comfort zone. If it does that for you, then I'm happy.
Wow.
And he was like, all right, cool. I'm going to make a song for it. And then he sends me the song, and it totally blew my mind.
Wow.
Like, this song is amazing. It's not at all what I had pictured for Boomer, but it fits so well. So I asked him if I could keep it in Boomer, and he's like, "Yeah, of course, it's for Boomer."
Cool.
So I have his song in there. I'm gonna give him credit for it at the end, in the credit screen of the game, because it's such a good song. And we still talk every once in a while online. But Nzai is actually like a real musician. So later on, I come to realize this guy's like a real musician. Like, this guy has music out. He's part of like the Chill Hop series. Like, he has a song on the Chill Hop like vinyl album.
Wow.
So yeah, I'm really just shocked and really grateful that he donated one of his incredible songs. So that's probably like the only song that's not on the OP1, and it sounds very different
That's
than
super
anything I
cool.
would
Well,
have
that's
written.
exciting. Like when players are getting to that level or that track. I mean, that's gonna change the mood entirely. I'm sure. Shout
For
out to
sure. That's
Enzaya. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, shout out to Nzaya, and
Yeah.
that's a great point you bring up, and that's exactly how I felt. Like, what if everybody is playing this game,
Hmm.
they get used to the sound, and all of a sudden the song comes on that's different than anything else you've heard. It's
Yeah.
definitely going to be a moment in the game that I think is going to resonate with people.
Oh man, I'm so excited. Well, let me go ahead and play the trailer. That way, some
Cool.
of our viewers and our listeners can actually hear or see what this game is going to be about. Listen for the sound effects, because I am just super excited about how these came to be, and I'm going to listen to it with fresh ears now that I know that it features Dr. Wave almost exclusively. So let's go ahead and play that, and when we come back, let's talk a little bit more about your video game creation history, and let's chat a little bit about being dads. All right, here is the Boomer trailer by North Games Studio. And we are back. Wow, that was an absolutely incredible sort of a sonic and what do you call it? Sonic journey that we've just been on here, along with the visuals that you've made. And honestly, you really are a fantastic pixel artist. You know, a lot of folks I think might discredit pixel art as not being like three-dimensional or, you know, just a photograph with a filter on it. But dude, like you've really got the depth, the shading, this pink sunset hue thing going on that I think is really, it's just a nice kind of a breath of fresh air when it comes to pixel art. But very beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, and the soundtrack too, man. That was awesome, and you can hear all the little blips and little pops of Boomer running around on the screen and jumping and stuff. The jumping is a little reminiscent of Sonic, I would say, like the little whoop whoop kind of sound.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Can you tell us how you made that exact sound, or is that the one on the video that you've described?
Yeah, no, I can't tell you exactly how I did that. That was one of those nights where I was just exploring sounds, and that's just what came out of it that night. I wish I had more information for you, but
no,
that's how okay. OP1 works. And then that's part of the struggles with OP1 for me is that there's no way to really save what you're doing. I mean, you could save presets and stuff, but then they have these weird names and you don't really ever get to, so I lost that sound. I'll never be able to find that sound again. I did it once and my OP1 froze for the first time a couple months ago.
I remember that. Yeah, we had a little chat about that. Yeah.
It had frozen. I had
no.
Yeah, the battery died. I was remodeling my house. I'd put away my stuff. I finally take it out. The battery's dead. I charge it. It wouldn't power on. I had to do factory reset, and I lost whatever was on it.
Oh man!
And some of those sounds are on it. So hopefully, those sounds that you hear now in the game are saved. In the development environment, but I can't like edit them anymore. Like I can't go back to the OP1 and fine tune them.
Right.
Wow. They're gonna remain the way they are, and the most I could probably do is do some post processing on them. I really don't want to. I'm trying to keep it just all OP1.
Nice.
And by the way, I don't post process any of my music. I don't like import it into Ableton or anything. It's however it is on OP1.
Wow. So there's no like compressor or limiter or like I don't know what you would call it, like the sprinkle of salt or whatever on the back. It's just literally what comes out of your OP1 is what we hear.
That's it. Whatever's in the OP1. I mean, the OP1 has brilliant. Some like overall like master
limiters.
Effects, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I think it does a pretty okay job for what for the kind of music I'm making, at least. I'm not trying to make pop music or anything like that.
Mhm.
That probably calls for different effects. For what I'm doing, it's perfectly okay. So I just leave it as is.
Wow, that's super cool. I love that. I love that about the OP1 actually. It's an entire sort of studio in one for really whatever it is that you want to make. I had a question about writing a video game soundtrack. I'm wondering, because with video games you can have a track run through a level, but do you need to do any kind of looping, or how does creating a soundtrack for a video game differ from, let's say, just creating something for your songwriting or Transit FM?
Yeah, so when you're making music for a video game,
Mm,
looping is definitely something that is important,
mm,
right? You want your tracks to be able to play continuously for as long as somebody's in a level. You don't know how long people will be in a level. So
right.
there is a situation where if your track is only a minute long and somebody's in that level for 2 minutes, that could be an issue. So I discovered that a bit into the middle of the process. So some of my songs don't loop very well.
Mm,
So some ways around it is um, have an intro that slowly comes in and have an outro that slowly comes out. And some of my tracks are like that. So even though they may not loop, they're graceful in how they exit and enter. So they can loop in that respect. Some other tracks that are a bit more punchy, OP1 is great for that because it,
hmm.
it does lend itself to work as a looper with its start and end points. You're
Right.
able to listen as you build the song, whether it's looping properly. So for that, it's perfect, which is one of the great benefits of having an OP1 is that you can hear what it's going to sound like on a loop.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That's true. I like that. So, I mean, even in the trailer just now, too, it starts with these really nice, lush kind of chords, and it does kind of end with a nice taper off. So, I'm assuming that that's kind of a good example of this, start and end of a level. And that is super,
For
super
sure.
cool. Yeah. Do you know how many tracks or levels you're planning currently for the game?
Man, I would love to have like 20 to 30 levels,
Yeah.
very short levels. Back in the era, that's
Mm,
kind of how it was. Like these retro games had like Sonic, or Mario. They're like brief, short playthroughs, and that's very gratifying when you're playing. You sit for 10 minutes and you play like 5 or 8 levels. It feels like you're progressing. So I definitely want to have a lot of small levels in the game.
that's awesome. And actually, let's pivot towards video game development here. I mean, how can you tell us a little bit about how you got into video game creation from all the music stuff that you were doing?
Really, it was just a desire to revisit something I wanted to do as a kid.
Nice.
In the 80s, growing up in Rochester, I was indoors all the time. I mean,
Mhm.
it's winter all the time. And Nintendo was huge. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing about Nintendo. So
Yep.
as a kid, I mean, I'm sure every 8-year-old boy in the 80s wanted to build video games too. And
Hmm.
it wasn't until after I had my own kids that I saw kind of how motivated they were and how full of excitement they were about things. And it just reminded me of when I was their age, what I wanted to do. And it was to design something. And for me, game development is it's a skill in all the things that are important to me, right? It's art, it's music, it's narrative, storytelling, animation. Like it's so many different skill sets combined into one
Right.
that just and it's so creative. It's such a big creative endeavor that it just really got me excited about doing it. And I've only been doing it for about 2 years now. I mean,
Hmm.
and I come from zero experience,
Wow. So you
and
didn't
there's
have
so
any
many
background
resources.
in coding or anything like that?
No, I mean I have an IT degree, so
Wow.
it's not fair to say that I started from scratch. I
Hmm.
have some development experience,
Cool.
but in the 80s there would have been no way to do anything like this.
Right.
It was a mystery. A Nintendo cartridge was a mystery back then. But now with YouTube, the internet, and so many resources, and it's all free. I mean, Unity's
Right.
free. Anybody who wants to jump into this can definitely do it for very cheap. And I saw it as an opportunity to revisit a childhood dream. And I have
Wow.
kids, and why not show them that you can do anything?
That is awesome. It's actually a really good segue into conversation about family. I mean, I think it's incredible that you have the ability to make music. You do all this stuff with your OP1, and you are building a game, which as you said, it is a cross section of all the different art forms out there. I was just wondering, how do you structure your life to be able to create all these things that you do?
That's a loaded question.
Sorry, it's a lot. I mean, I'm a new dad. I have one kid right now. And, you know, one of the reasons this podcast exists is because I needed something that was a little bit shorter, a little bit quicker, I guess, to get out in terms of, music stuff that
Yeah.
then, long form YouTube tutorials. And that's really why I'm doing it this way. I really had to go through a bunch of changes, but creating something as vast and as complicated and in need of constant iteration like a video game, it's just, I just want to say, kudos to you, man, for like being able to do that. But do you have any sort of tips on
Yeah.
structuring
So
life?
let me tell you, I
Yeah.
have three. I got a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an 8-year-old. We have two
Two
dogs,
dogs as
and
well. Yeah.
we have this. We're a big family, so there's definitely, and I'm a very dedicated dad. I do spend a lot of time with my kids. I'm part of the PTA and everything.
Wow.
So I think I think most importantly is really trying to prioritize what's important to you.
Hmm.
First and foremost, I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good dad. I want to be involved in their sports. I coach their little league, take care of the family, take care of the dogs, take care of my day job, which gives me the stability I need to be able to pursue these things.
Hmm.
Everything else is going to be icing on the cake. So you have to be gracious with yourself, right? You have to give yourself the space to want to work on these passion projects. If you don't prioritize the things that matter to you the most, then the things you're passionate about will just become hurdles. So
Mm.
if I'm not excelling in the things that are important to me, then I won't want to be creative. That's how, having a healthy lifestyle it allows me to be my best creative self.
Wow.
So check in with yourself and give yourself,
Hmm.
give yourself the patience and give yourself time to do things. Um,
That's
I know a
absolutely
lot of
incredible.
friends
Yeah.
that they jump into game development and
Yep.
they put a lot of effort into that. And if it doesn't work out for them, it comes at a big cost. They've
Mm.
sacrificed relationships, they sacrifice things that are important. So I say focus on those things first, right? Um, and the way that I structure everything, but going back to your question, is I use Notion a lot. And Notion is a free application. You can get this for your phone, your desktop, Mac, PC. And
Anywhere.
it's like a note taking application, but it also
Hmm.
has a database backend. So you can build relationships between all your notes. And the
Wow.
way I structure everything I do is by having a very, very long to do list. It goes from top to bottom and it looks like a bunch of post it notes of everything that I have to do in Boomer, whatever idea I have, whatever wakes me up at night. And I thought, ooh, I got to add this power up, or I got to add this to my level. Or,
Nice.
somebody on Instagram said you should have Boomer crouch. Never thought about that. So I'm going to add that to my to
Mm.
do list, right? Boomer should crouch.
Yeah.
So these are all things that people online, that's another thing too, post online and get feedback from people. They'll help
Mm.
you along the way, reach out to a community of other game developers to keep you motivated,
Wow.
other musicians to keep you motivated and
Yeah.
keep introducing you to new things and new ideas. So I write everything down. And then to the right of that to-do list is my up next to-do list. These are the
Mm.
things that I'm going to be working on next
The
after my
priorities.
long backlog.
Wow.
And then after that is a list of in progress, things I'm actually working on. And that can't be more than 4 or 5 things at a time.
Right.
So I typically work on that. And then when I don't have time to work on my game, I'm working on that to-do list. I'm researching things from that to-do list. I'm adding additional resources, pictures, ideas. So I really don't have a lot of time to work on Boomer. That's why it's taking me so long. But, 15, 20 minutes sometimes is all I get in an entire
Wow.
week.
Yeah.
But it's a productive 15, 20 minutes.
Yep.
I'm organized. I have this to-do list. I spent all week kind of curating it. So when I do find 20 minutes, I
You know
go in
exactly
with an
what to do.
intention.
Yes.
I know exactly what to do.
Wow.
Right. And I never feel like I'm wasting time, because when I don't have the time, I'm building this to-do list.
Right.
So that's really helpful,
Yeah, that's
and I
great.
think it's a great way to make sure that you're pushing through. But yeah, prioritize the important things in life. When you have some time to sit down and work on your passion project, it's only going to be that much more rewarding.
I completely agree. I love what you said in the beginning is to be grateful, gracious, grateful for
Yeah.
the life that you do have that allows you to get to be able to make stuff. I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of dads out there, they kind of go into sort of a panic. They feel like, oh man, everyone else is making stuff. You know, I need to be creating something at every obtainable second. Why am I not, you know, creating stuff? But in order to do that, I think the solid foundation has to exist. And it seems almost like you are organizing yourself to kind of calmly and methodically go through and work on, you know, one thing at a time so that you don't ever get overwhelmed, because that really kills productivity. And I think that's really solid advice for any, you know, just not just new dads out there, but really anyone who's trying to get something done. Um,
And it kills
yeah,
creativity too.
yeah, yeah, it really does. I mean, you can't just have inspiration whenever
No.
you know, whenever you have a free second. I mean, I like what you said about in the middle of the night sometimes, you know. I get a lot of ideas that come to me on dog walks. So I'll just have to either like pull my phone out or something and, you know, quickly get something down, or I'll do I hate to say it this way, but like I'll download it into my wife Lauren. So I'll just be like, I got this idea, like here it is, and then we'll just kind of talk about it later on. So I mean that's another thing. That's another way to, I guess, kind of constantly get ideas down, but then to organize it in a way that you can then kind of go through a list, prioritize what needs to be done, I think is excellent advice. That's really cool, man. I mean, I think that's a really good sort of place to end things, is, you know, giving people the advice or the ability to take to really to take action and get things done, whatever it is that they're trying to do. So really, really cool. So before we conclude, is there any other, you know, advice that you'd want to give to newcomers to the video game making world or to the Instagram synthesizer world?
You know, don't be afraid to post. Don't be afraid to be a part of the community. I think I became the most creative and the most productive when I decided to start sharing my process, even though my process wasn't complete.
Hmm.
And be open to feedback, right? I mean, it's always tough at first to think that maybe what you're doing is correct, and then little by little you start recognizing that you could have done a better job.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
all part of growing as a musician, as a creative person. Put yourself out there, be part of the community, contribute. If you can help others that are starting, don't forget where you came from, right? Make sure you turn around and extend the hand out to the next person. And I think that's the most important part of building any kind of supportive community for musicians, for creative people, um, is be a contributing member of it.
Absolutely well said. Before we close, do you have any current project shout outs or any upcoming stuff that you might want to just do a little shameless plug for?
No, man, that's part of being a dad. You don't get to prepare for things like that. Um, You know, I'm working on Boomer.
Yep.
I haven't posted a whole lot on Instagram. I used to post very frequently, a lot, all the time.
Hmm.
I stepped away from it just a little bit so I don't overburden people with Boomer, because honestly, that's really the only thing I'm working on, and I'm coding a lot, which is not always you know, it's not always fun to just look at code. Like there's nothing exciting about just staring at code. But you know, do me a solid, go wish list Boomer on Steam, share it with friends. It's a fun project I've been working on for a while. It's probably not the best game out there, but it's one that I've worked on, and it's one that has inspired a good amount of people. And I hope it does the same for you. I hope it inspires you to go out and do something you're passionate about, even if you don't know what you're doing. Like me, you'll get there. It's pretty awesome. That's the only plug I got.
I love it. I love it. And actually, Boomer does, like, for anyone who's a fan of fast paced platforming where the controls feel really fluid and snappy and tight. That's, I think it is a very cool looking game for that.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
And thank you so much, North, for being on Second Operator here. We're going to close in just a minute. Actually, we're going to close now. I'm new to this.
Thank you so much
Of
for
course.
having me, for
Yeah.
having me be a part of this. It's really cool to be a part of your process. Thanks for
Thank
following
you.
along and being a fan yourself. I'm a fan of your work too. So thank you for having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Josh/North. We will talk to you soon. We'll catch you on Instagram.
All right. Thank you
All
all.
right. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
You can follow Josh or North at North Games Studio on Instagram, and you can find all of his music at joshrivera.bandcamp.com. You can also find him on Spotify at Transit FM. You can just search for that in Spotify and get a few albums that are up there. All really, really awesome stuff. You've been listening to Second Operator. Thank you so much for joining us on the live stream and being part of this awesome community. If you want to get in touch with me with any news or community shoutouts, you can connect with me on Instagram at second.operator, as well as on Twitter at second_operator. You can find us right here on YouTube at youtube.com/@secondoperator, and eventually on every podcast platform in the universe. If you would like to support our show, we are on Patreon at patreon.com/secondoperator. There's currently 2 tiers available, and both tiers get a fancy Second Operator sticker. So if you're interested, please go check that out. It would mean the world to me if you did, because it also means I get a sticker, and I would really like a sticker. Next week, we will be interviewing the very talented Daniela, aka Ella Violet, on her ambient music and her sound healing work, all the way from Germany. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. We will catch you next time.